Okay, for our final panel, we are going to be talking about ensuring social equity in life science. So just so everyone knows, we've extended our reception time frame, so we will still have an hour together to drink. But before that, we're going to enjoy this next panel discussion with a lot of really great examples of what Dr. Tia Williams was talking about.
All right, guys. So John Balchunas, I'm the Workforce Director for NIMBLE, the National Institute for Innovation in Manufacturing Biopharmaceuticals. We are one of 17 Manufacturing USA institutes focused on manufacturing innovation, in our case on biopharma manufacturing innovation. We are based out of the University of Delaware. I'll confess that North Carolina is home for me, so I'm not from the region. I'm up here for the event and happy to be here. I've kind of lived and breathed biopharma workforce development most of my career, and so I'm kind of humbled to be from a state that's had a lot of success in both economic and workforce development over the last decade. It's been a really concerted policy or effort within the state, and I think it's paid off. But I think we're still learning, I think just like everybody else, and I think we can talk more about that later. So I'm excited to have this conversation. I'm excited to learn from the folks that are here. I want to put just an exclamation point on everything that Tia said. I think we'll probably get into that. I think it's, from NIMBLE's perspective in talking about biopharma workforce development in general, I think one of the biggest challenges that our industry faces is just a lack of awareness and a lack of sort of innovation when it comes to looking at non-traditional pathways into the industry. Our industry is very lockstep and focused on kind of the bachelor's, PhD, master's route into the industry without necessarily looking at all these sort of new and non-traditional pathways. And I'm excited to have several representation within this panel of just some of these different kind of programs that are coming in there to really try and broaden the talent pool. And so looking to get into that. And so I guess by way, just to start, and I think we'll have a lot more time as the 30 minutes drags on to kind of touch on what all of you guys are up to. But could you each just give a quick overview of who you are, your organization, and your role? Tom, we can start with you maybe.
Sure. So Tom Piambino, I work for a company called IPS. IPS was conceived in this region to be a company that really does design, architecture, construction, and validation for the pharmaceutical industry. That's all we do. Don't do strip malls and stadiums. That's all we do is pharma, and we've been doing that for 35 years. So my personal background, I'm an engineer, architectural engineer, and I help companies get their businesses out of the ground, and those businesses could take the form of a new facility, could be a startup company, but just trying to help lead a company that's has science coming out and help them get it to really commercialization and qualification in order to do, to produce drugs, FDA-approved drugs.
Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Atkins, and I serve as the Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships and Career Pathways at Cheney University. You may be thinking, what does that mean? Great question. So the work that I do there is really focused on our initiatives to help build partnerships that help to support the types of talent development that you all are looking for. And so my work is really focused on identifying excellent partners, and we'll talk more about what that looks like, I'm sure, as the panel goes on, but also supporting student development. And so I oversee our Career Development Center as well as our workforce development initiatives that are focused on micro-credentialing and really helping students to develop the skill sets that employers are looking for.
My name is David Zuska. I'm Associate Dean of Biomedical Studies at the Wistar Institute, which is our nation's oldest biomedical research institute. My role at Wistar is really to help expand our repertoire or menu of workforce development programs. I came out of traditional higher education. I spent many years at LaSalle University, just up Broad Street. And I really became aware of the big gaps between, as John mentioned, the bachelor's, PhD sort of track in the life sciences versus the types of competencies that industry was looking for. And I really was excited to come over to Wistar and to lean into this workforce space because I think it is a much more equitable, inclusive trainings and education space. And it also provides a lot more value to both the participants, the trainees, and the employers because we don't have sort of the inertia of traditional higher education. And we can do things that really connect employer needs, and a training program. I'm excited that sort of one of the partners that Vanessa gets to work with is the Wistar Institute, and I co-teach a course at Cheney in the spring each semester, and I'm also excited to try to recruit people out of Phil's program, Bulb, at the Science Center.
Great transition. Hey folks, my name is Phil Brooks. I'm the Director of STEM Workforce Partnerships at the University City Science Center. I think you heard from Tracy Brala a little bit earlier about the Science Center. 4 pillars, really strong, focusing on a lot of economic development and other things within the region. What I do want to talk about and very specifically focus on the topic that we're talking about is our workforce development program called Building an Understanding of Lab Basics. We'll get into some of the data and things of that nature, but really what my role is at the Science Center is focusing on connecting the community and making them aware of what's going on with companies and how we get really, really great talent of various education and work experience levels into your doors.
All right, so thanks everybody. So David, let me come back to you. I first became aware, I think, of you and Wistar through Maggie Bryans up at Montco, who I've known for years and have sort of partnered with Montco in different ways over the years. So excited just for you to share a little bit more about your programs, about what you've learned in the course of running your programs over these years, and just sort of catch us up to speed.
Yeah, so Wistar got involved in the workforce space over 20 years ago with the Biomedical Technician Training Program, which selfishly was a training program for Wistar. It was a partnership and remains a partnership with the Community College of Philadelphia and involves hands-on laboratory training and summer research internships. And if you look at that program, it's produced, I think we probably have well over 200 trainees that have gone through that program. If you were to look at the genomics core facility at the Wistar Institute, it's entirely staffed by graduates of this program. It's very practical, and it was designed to actually serve Wistar's own workforce needs. It has expanded over time, over that 20 years, through an NSF grant a few years ago. We're now working with Maggie Bryans at Montgomery Community College, Bucks Community College, Camden Community College, Camden County in New Jersey, as well as Chester and Delaware Community College next year. And the transition here is really from a city-centered approach to a regional approach. And that's interesting because we had a problem recruiting enough interested candidates every year from the Community College of Philadelphia into the program. And we needed to expand the scope. And this highlights one area that I think Phil is really working in, and that is exposure to this industry. And it's something that I think Tia touched on in an answer to a question. We need to increase exposure to our industry to people in the region, not just in Philadelphia, but in the region as well. So we have that program. It became a registered pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship program in 2017. That allows us access to federal workforce development dollars that help us support the program itself, but also provides a subsidy to employers who hire people out of the program. And we are also, we've built on the success of that in a new model of the technician training program, which is a partnership with the West Philadelphia Skills Initiative to create a cohort model working with a single employer. And I was excited to hear Sumit from Ivance earlier. So last year we ran a pilot program where we trained individuals from Philadelphia, those that the requirements was that they had a high school diploma or a GED and 12th grade reading and math skills. And they came from all over Philadelphia. They were under or unemployed. And we had a 10-week fundamentals of biology and GMP manufacturing program, followed by a 2-week hands-on laboratory training program, followed by a 10-week externship at Iovance. And these are many people who had no previous exposure to biotechnology or even biology. And 10 of them in that program are now employed at Iovance in aseptic manufacturing technician positions. And I will tell you, I have taught many, many college biology classes. But as I went to Wistar each evening, I taught a Fundamentals of Biology course on Monday and Thursday evenings. I was more grateful for the opportunity to teach that course and to be involved in that program than anything I've ever done in education before. We're really excited that next week we're going to welcome cohort number 2 of that program, and we're right in the middle of a program working with CHOP for laboratory research technicians following the same model. What's really unique about this, we have a model where we can work with an individual employer to customize and tailor the training that goes on in the program to meet the needs of a specific occupation or job description. So it's a really flexible program that really can match sort of a workforce pool with an employer. I'll also quickly just throw in that we're working on a quality science apprenticeship. We submitted an application to the U.S. Department of Labor last year that was recently approved that now recognizes a quality control analyst as a apprenticeable occupation. And we're looking to work with a couple employers in the region to get that registered in the state of Pennsylvania. This will be the first ever apprenticeship in quality science. We've enrolled our second cohort in that program now who is working through that program. They get a certification as a certified quality science professional through an organization called Pathway for Patient Health. I can chat more about that offline.
So thanks, David. And just to follow up, I'm glad that you mentioned the whole sort of exposure to careers and awareness piece. It sounds simplistic. It's, for those of us that work in this space, we get tired of talking about it because every single time you workshop the issue, it comes down to increasing awareness in careers, and it's like the one paramount thing, but it is so central to everything. It's also pre-competitive to any region. Any region that has a biotech industry is facing the exact same issue, and nobody's figured it out any better than anybody else. Increasing awareness is really paramount. Kind of shifting a little bit, Vanessa, I'm glad to see an HBCU represented. I'm glad to see what I believe is the oldest of the HBCUs represented. I'm curious, on the planning call, I think we talked a little bit about Thinkubator. I'm curious in hearing a little bit about the Thinkubator program, how that plugs in, how students plug into that, and something that I wasn't aware that you were doing until you mentioned it in passing, but I'd be curious on you touching also on micro-credentials.
So, as you pointed out, John, yes, Cheney University is the nation's first HBCU, founded in 1837. So in our 176-year history, one of the things that has become very apparent, and the statistics don't lie, is that HBCUs are a social mobility tool. And so our students who are graduating from HBCUs go on to do amazing things. And you heard Dr. Tia mention that a little bit earlier in terms of the accomplishments. Thank you. And so one of the things that we do with David and we're doing is developing these partnerships with institutions that allow us to then support our students' growth and development through, as you both mentioned, John and David, exposure in these different fields. And so the key area where we've started is in bioscience because we know that there's a need for skilled workers in that area. And so we've been able to identify specific partners that have come onto our campus and started operating their commercial labs on our facilities that were underutilized or unutilized. And so what we found is that has been a successful model for placing entities or companies that are new, that need additional resources, that may not be able to build, but can definitely operate their businesses if given the proper space and materials and equipment very well and contribute to our campus community. And so though we have partnerships like that that we have with Wistar, we also have companies that are actually located on our campuses running their businesses. We have 4 that are operating right now on our campus, one that has a facility that is outside of our science center and the other within our science center, and they're running these commercial labs, taking advantage of the state-of-the-art building that we have, but also contributing to the students' education through allowing students to shadow, allowing students to have internships, One is actually an adjunct faculty member at the university, but just all of the businesses provide opportunities for students to engage, to gain the exposure that we're talking about. Many have fallen in love with the lab as a result of those opportunities. And so the Thinkubator is an opportunity for us to expand that, to give additional businesses and give additional companies that are starting up and can take advantage of the fact that we're in a Keystone Innovation Zone, which will obviously provide some financial benefit to those companies. And then we are obviously in a very wonderful area where we've got 275 acres that we have, so it's a beautiful place to work and live. We have over 70% of our student population is coming from the city of Philadelphia, so it gives an opportunity for those individuals to invest back into the city of Philadelphia and still remain a part of developing the workforce for the city of Philadelphia. And so it gives an opportunity for more companies to come operate their businesses, invest in students, help develop the workforce, and also take advantage of the benefit of the things that we have in place to support them, such as $5 million in state appropriations to help to retrofit spaces so that they are a wonderful space for those companies to operate their businesses.
Can I ask one clarifying question? One clarifying question, I'll switch to this mic. And just out of curiosity, just in studying different regional sort of ecosystems and similar initiatives, there were some neat initiatives out in California a while ago that I was tracking that had a social, I guess, a social impact component to the real estate investment and everything else, where they were requiring the companies that were locating in the space, guarantee that they were going to place a certain number of interns or a certain number of, students from that university. Is there any kind of arrangement with Cheney and the companies that come in?
Great question, John. And yes, all of the companies that operate their businesses on our campus, all of our partners on any level, David does it at the Wistar Institute. They do offer internships to all of our students. But in addition to the paid internship opportunity for the students, I think they provide an amazing opportunity for students to just have mentorship. And I was speaking earlier with another of the conference attendee and conference attendees, and one of the things that we spoke about was just that mentorship is not necessarily that you're tied to an individual, but for whatever stage you're at in your career or progressing towards your career, it's who has what you need at that moment. And so it gives our students a wealth of individuals that they can go to and receive mentorship from no matter where they are in their career planning. And they're figuring out, just what works for them. We have quite a few, almost 30% of our students that come into the university that are pursuing either pre-medicine or pre-health sciences degrees, but we know because of the small percentage of individuals in society in general, and especially amongst our community of underrepresented individuals that become physicians, they all won't become physicians. And so what these types of programs and opportunities are doing for students is providing them additional options for their career pursuits. Once they get introduced to them and they get into these environments, they really have the opportunity to learn and figure out what is a good fit for their skills, for their interests, and even for the kind of lifestyle that they'd like to live. The other thing that I didn't mention, John, that you asked about was the micro-credentialing, and that's not necessarily specifically focused on bioscience, though that is an area where we're building out micro-credentials. But one of the things that we had a conversation with one of our colleagues from Merck, one of the things that he said is that they're moving away from this idea that all of their entry-level staff need to have engineering degrees. And so it really stood out to us. And so we really started looking at and talking, having conversations with other companies about what does the training look like, so that our students will graduate with a biology degree, but they'll also graduate with additional skill sets, such as they're learning how to culture and they're learning how to be lab technicians. And so we're developing out these micro-credentials that allow them to have these training experiences along the way that they'll add to their degree. And so whether they decide to go into medical school or not, they'll graduate with a degree, but they'll also graduate with new skill sets through micro-credentialing.
Awesome. I'll take the microphone back. All right, so thanks. So Tom, let me shift over to you. Glad to have industry represented on the panel. I know you've also had some ties in with Thinkubator and Cheney, so I was just wondering if you could comment, one, on sort of the need within the region generally, but then also just on your specific ties with Cheney.
Sure. So the Thinkubator was actually a concept that IPS was going to roll out pre-COVID. We were going to create a space for people, entrepreneurs to, and we were going to house them, give them ideas and resources, and allow them to incubate and then grow and then either spin out or become part of IPS or just collaborate in general. And so we had run into folks from Mosaic who were working with Cheney, and we started to combine all these ideas. And at that point, we were saying, how do we innovate here? There's a university that needs support. They've got assets that could be redeployed to not only help the region, but help the community and help the university. And we got some ideas, and we got people who understand life sciences. We're in a good vantage point where we have hundreds of projects each year where we see new processes, new therapies are being developed, and so we can kind of see where the market's going. And so the Thinkubator, we put our heads together and we said, all right, let's start the Thinkubator. And we've become a little bit of the client for the time being on the Thinkubator, understanding what the labs need to look like, how they need to be fit out, what type of biosafety level they need to have. And so, really where we landed is, it's about a 36,000 square foot building that's going to have an assortment of 12 to 18 labs in it, all biosafety level 2, to really, entertain private industry, whether it's a startup or mid-level or if it's just a satellite facility for big pharma, who knows. And they come in and they have to bring in students to work in that. That's a prerequisite of being part of the program. So it's not a preference, it's a prerequisite. So that's key to this. So at this point, we're doers. I think we've all acknowledged that we need to do more. And that sort of gets you from acknowledging to thinking about it. And we've started to think about it, and that gets you from thinking to saying, and the Thinkubator is saying to doing. And that's what our goal is. We really want to be the heart of this industry locally, and get the Thinkubator to be really just a flourishing thing that gets more and more students exposed. We're doing some work down in the city for Washington Carver. We have a STEM program that we teach down there. We work with ISBE, which is a big pharmaceutical organization. We do training. And so, over the years, we've trained thousands and thousands of people on doing qualification, on doing engineering, on designing facilities. And so I think, we're in a good position to help. And that's our goal, and that's our role with the Thinkubator.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so Phil, going down to you. Definitely want to hear sort of your perspective on everything that you've been up to. Definitely want you to touch on the Bulb program. I'm interested in learning more myself. Going back to the earlier comment around awareness, I'd also like just to touch on that and how that impacts the Bulb program. And I say that because I'm coming from North Carolina, where we've also got a lot of interesting little initiatives going around. But some of those initiatives struggle to take off just because there's not enough students signing up for them. And so there's all these great opportunities, but students don't know about them, or the population that needs to be in there doesn't know about them. So just if you could sort of touch on a couple of those.
Yeah, there's a bunch of directions we can go, but I think the awareness part is something that I'll start with. So this summer we had a Bulb program. It was really amazing, 5 weeks. Before we started that Bulb program for the summer, we went out to the faith-based organizations in the West Philadelphia area. So we legitimately asked questions to the faith-based organizations. We attended job fairs, we went to different community events, and we kind of had all of our lab-related things set up. And instead of people kind of walking by and saying, that's not for me, they were like, tell me more about this. So the interest is there, the accessibility and awareness is it just needs to be connected. As I mentioned in my introduction, we do our best to make sure there's a bridge between communities and companies. Having come from West Philadelphia, born and raised myself, but then also having a biology background, working in city government, working in a nonprofit space, that kind of professional collection of opportunities for myself really puts me in a very interesting spot where I can go to Christian Stronghold Baptist Church, or I can go to Mount Carmel Baptist Church, talk about these different things because I was raised in a Baptist church, but then also convey a sense of urgency and a sense of gratitude for the place that kind of birthed me. I don't want to be weird, but that kind of birthed me in a way, right? But then also kind of having that code shift and talking with organizations and companies and having conversations with HBCUs, Wistar Institute, all of the above, really with the purpose of saying, okay, we want to be at the center of this, but at the end of the day, what's going to benefit the participant at the on stretch, right? What's going to benefit the community? What's going to benefit the company? So I'd say I have a lot more to say about it. I'm getting really excited. I have a lot more to say about this, but our BOLD program, just to wrap up what that is, it's a 5-week program. We do a lot of like very specific lab technical training. We partner with institutions and organizations. We also have a financial literacy component to it. That was a suggestion from one of our participants from our past cohort. They said, hey, Phil, like all the life science skills is great, but as grown adults, as adult learners, it's really important for us to be able to balance our checkbooks and all those other related financial things. So we partnered with different banks within the city. And then the last part is the professional development piece, which I think is sometimes undersold. We have industry partners coming in to do professional development. Instead of the Science Center, or instead of going to like other like industry, different partners, we have industry members come in to do professional development. This is the HR teams of these organizations. These are the HR teams of these industry members coming in and working with our participants one-on-one on resume writing, interview skills, and tips. This gives us a position, or this at least like gives us a way to shine a light on how to influence hiring practices. Hiring practices has been the same for a really long period of time, but that exposure, even from the community side, even from the HR talent acquisition side, having them come in and work with our participants just like breaks the ice on, things that have been practiced for a long period of time. And if you want to talk about being innovative, I think that's pretty, it's pretty clever, it's pretty cool. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, how can we do more of this? That's just one example. How can we bring more HR folks into Wistar, into Cheney, into IB, all these different places to make sure that hiring practices moving forward are equitable, are just.
So I appreciate you mentioning that, and I'm going to steal something Chris actually from like Chris Frew with BioBuzz had mentioned to me in a conversation a while ago. This whole concept of sort of risk tolerance within the HR community, and I think I'm glad you mentioned bringing HR to the table because, and I'd say even more than HR, sort of the talent acquisition community in particular within HR need to be at the table. They need to understand these programs are out there, and that's the only way you're sort of going to change those minds. I think the last question that I kind of want to sort of go to with everybody just to comment on is really around collaboration and communication. And I say that selfishly because I'm curious, and it's something I find interesting tracking and watching in different regions of the US, including North Carolina, where I'm based. 15 years ago in North Carolina, there was very clearly, one convener. It was the North Carolina Biotech Center. There was one lead, university that was doing applied education. There was the community college system. And so there were just a handful of partners, and it was easy. And now all of a sudden, with influx of funding from EDA and everybody else, there's a gazillion players at the table. And I'm just curious if you guys could comment, does that make things messier, and or are there strategies that, that you guys are seeing that are making that better, and just sort of how folks are partnering with each other?
I'll start. Like me and David, we talk pretty often. So we have a really great relationship. I'm just saying that on the stage. I don't know if you agree. I just put myself out there. It's all good. So I bring that up because you mentioned communication. I think communication is too important. There's history. History will always be history, but I think moving forward, doing what's right for the folks that we claim to service is probably the most paramount thing. So I'll just tell this very quick story. So we had a participant named Sanyu Carpenter. He participated in the BOLD program. He did really amazing during that time. He applied for the first BTT IOVANCE program, knocked it out of the park. I didn't hear from him for a few weeks. I was like, oh, I hope Sanyu's doing well. So I reached out, texted him. I was like, Sanyu, you cool? I didn't hear back from him. I was like, dang, man, I hope something happens. And then we got information back saying that Sanyu was hired by IOVANCE. So I was like, yes, that's great. That's one example of a way and communication in Philadelphia, from the BOLD program to the Wistar Institute WIPSI program to IOVANCE, which is, again, just one example. If we can amplify that, if we can get more people aware of some of these things that's going on, the better. I had so much more to say, but I'll stop right there.
I think the challenge is the scalability, because it's not that hard. I mean, it's a challenge to build a program that is going to impact a small group of people. But it's hard to imagine scaling that and doing it systematically across the entire region in a way that's really going to move the needle. And that's the point where I think collaboration is important. I also think, go back to Iovance. So they were amazing partners in taking this leap in this first program, but they had built out a big manufacturing facility, and they needed to hire people. And that put a lot of pressure on them to think of new ways of hiring. And I think we're still pretty early on in where our companies are in the region, especially in the cell and gene therapy space. The next big facility coming on board, right, Sparks manufacturing facility. But if you have these 40 or 50 companies that are most R&D stage, as they transition to commercial stage and they consider how they're going to do their manufacturing, there's really going to be the opportunity to think about how do we, because we're going to have to do this again and again for multiple different companies. And we're going to need a systematic approach. And right now, I'm not sure where the leadership of that centralized, systematic approach is right now. I'm really excited about a grant that Philadelphia Works. Philadelphia's Workforce Development Board has received through the Good Jobs Challenge to create a cross-sectional partnership in four different industry areas. One is healthcare and biotechnology, and that seems to be potentially a way that we can kind of marshal all of our partners and have them not competing, but actually all rowing, in the same direction and understanding. For Bulb and Wistar, I think we figured out like our working relationship and how we get Sanyu and we move him from maybe he's got this latent interest in biotechnology, but he doesn't know what to do with it or what opportunities are, that we're creating sort of the stackable system that is ending up with a real job and opportunity that is providing a ton of value to Iovance. And if we can figure out how to scale that, I think, John, I wouldn't, but I think that actually gives Philadelphia a real advantage if we could figure that out.
So what I would say about collaboration is I have a lot of individuals that are reaching out, and I think that's where it begins. I think that if everyone doesn't just sit and say, I don't know how this is going to happen, but instead just reaches out to someone who they know is doing work, I think that's where it starts. And I think that even if there are, a lot of other players that are introduced into the ecosystem, there's enough work for all of us. There's never going to be, we get to the point where there's nothing that each of us can do if we'd like to reach out and be a part of the solution. And we're thinking specifically about, and my work has been specifically with underrepresented individuals, specifically in STEM, but there are many other areas, many other industries where there's underrepresentation that we need to fix. It's all of our responsibility. All of us has a part to play. And so if each individual will just say, I'm going to step up and do my part, I'm going to reach out and join in the work of someone else. I think part of what is also challenging, I think when you talked about, John, there being so many players, is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are opportunities that already exist. And if we all contribute to the existing opportunities to influence and to build out these programs that you have at the Wistar Institute, that you have at Bulb, that we have at Cheney University, I think that we all can be a force that can make a big difference in this region.
That was a pretty good close. I just say, I think we're at a point of inflection, where impatience is bubbling over, and that's good. And, as we started to get into our journey, we found that there was a lot of people on a journey as well, disparate and separate, but that's good. It's still, something's getting done. And so if we can collaborate, that's great. But man, we have a lot of resources, and we're going to help each other, and at least the folks in this panel can do something together and, be impatient and just go after it.
Sweet. All right, so thanks everybody. I want to just thanks to the panelists. Thank you guys for sticking around for the workforce session. These sessions can sometimes be sparsely attended in these kind of conferences, so I'm glad to see people stuck around. So with that, I'd like to say thank you.